Hi guys, my name is Lawal Femi John and I'm a digital product designer with over 2 years of experience. I combine user insights and business needs into design, and I'm an advocate for usability and accessibility. I go by the brand name Femuski Dev. Thanks for having me design corners, and also a big shout out to Wisdom, that's your team lead, for having me on speak about getting started with auto layout in Figma. Now let's dive right into it, right? Before we understand what auto layout is all about, there are basic terms we ought to know as designers. I have a session outlined for us here. The first thing we're talking about is what? Frames. Second, constraints. And third is auto layout and what? And resizing. Now, what are frames? Right? Frames allows you to choose an area of the canvas to create your designs in. Unlike traditional adverts, you can also nest frames within other frames, right? This allows you to create more complex designs that work together. Frames also give you access to extra functionality like layout grids, auto layouts, constraints, and prototyping. Now let's dive deeper right into it. Now we have our design workspace here. How do you add a frame to your canvas? This is our canvas. How do you add a frame to that? There are two ways. You can either go to your nav bar here, click on this, you have a frame. That's the frame tool. You can click and drag, we have a frame. And you can click on F on your keyboard, press F on your keyboard, and you have a frame, right? And another advantage of frame is that it helps you in the sense that you can add several presets, right, for your design. Let's say you are designing for MacBook, or you are designing for iPhone. By clicking F, you have a lot of presets here, right? Figma has done the job for you, so you don't need to know the size of all those screens. You just have to go here and click on this iPhone X or iPhone 11. I have that here. And another awesome feature of frames is that you can add auto layout to it. As you can see, the auto layout feature is here. Now let's try that on a rectangle. This is a rectangle. I click on R on my keyboard, and can you see there's no section here? I can only change this to a frame, so I can add other features to it. Now, another feature you can add to frame is layout grid. You can also add what? A layout grid. You can add auto layout, and also it works well while you are prototyping, right? Can you see I have a note here which I can link to another frame? Let me duplicate this to illustrate that. Can you see I can link this to this? But if I have a rectangle, I can't do that, right? I can't do that, and can you see it doesn't have a node, right? I can't even link it to it. Talk less of linking or talk less of reversing what I've linked, right? So that's basically why you have to use frame across your design, right? Frames helps you to design dynamic and responsive user interface. Now, what next thing we're going over is what constraints. What are constraints? If you hear the word constraints, what comes to your mind? Limitation, right? And what? Restriction. Now, in Figma, constraints tell Figma how child objects / frames should respond when you resize their parent frames. This helps you to control how designs look across different screens, sizes, and devices. Now let's dive deeper into it, right? We are using frames all through. So I have this frame, right? Let me change the color to one that has less contrast. Yeah, I have this. Then this is a frame. I need this. Okay, yeah. Then I'm going to draw a rectangle inside. That's so you can see it has been nested, right? On our layer panel, we have the main frame here. That's the main layer, and the objects. That's the child object, right? Child object. So we have that there, right? Now, looking at this, you understand that frames, right? I mentioned that frames allows you to understand how the child object reacts when you change the parent container, right? Now look at this. If I click on this, notice what happened, right? It's seeming as if nothing is happening to the child object. But this brings us down to what the different types of constraints we have. Now, constraint are limitation, right? Meaning that what we want to restrict the movement of the child object, right? Now look at the panel that we have here. I can only add constraints on the child object. Notice for constraints we have two types: horizontal and what? Vertical constraints. Now horizontal affects left and right, as we all know, and vertical affects the top and bottom. Now this is how they work. If I constrain this to the left and top, here, notice what happens, right? If I increase this horizontally, it sticks to the left hand side. Even if I increase it from the other edge here, from the left side, it sticks to the left. And if I increase it from the top, it sticks to the top, right? And if I increase it from the bottom, it sticks the same way. Now let me explain the horizontal constraints, right? That's left and right. So let's set it to right. Look at what happens if I increase it here. Notice it sticks to the right. Let me shift it here so that you know. Let me move it there. Yeah, can you see? It sticks to the right hand side. And another feature that we have on the horizontal axis is left and right. Now this is what happens for the left and right. I'm going to increase this. Notice the padding that we have around this, right? Around this object. Notice what happens if I change it to left and right. I increase this. Can you see how responsive it is, right? The child object keeps increasing, meaning that it's kind of elastic, right? So, but it keeps the padding on the left and right axis. And the next one that we have on the constraint is what? Center, meaning that what? Regardless of how much I move this, can you see what is happening? The padding is increasing, but the size of that object is not increasing. It's just like the opposite of left and right constraints. The last one that we have is what? Scale. It increases in the same what? Proportion. As I increase this, can you see this? Both the padding, that's the space between here, and also the object size in terms of the width, it increases, right? Now another one that we'll be going over is what is on the y-axis, right? That's the vertical constraint. So let me reduce this size. Let me take it here. Now for the vertical axis, set it to top is going to be fixed to the top regardless of how I change this, right? Regardless of the changes I make to the parent container. Can you see it's still at the top? If I increase it from the top here, it works, right? And another thing is that if I change this to the bottom, if I increase this from the bottom, resize it here, it still sticks, right? And if I increase it from the top, nothing happens. It's seeming like it's fixed, right? Because I only constrain it to the bottom. And yeah, another one you have is what? The top and bottom, which works is similar to what? Right and left. How do you think this is going to work? Yes, you got it. The size of the frame of the object is going to increase, and it's going to keep the padding. Can you see that? And also for center, it stays in the center, right? And if I increase this, just the margin, the padding that we have, that keeps increasing. And the last one that we have is what? Scale, and it increases both the padding and the size of the height of the object increases in the same proportion. So that's that about constraints. Now we are going to use constraints with Autolayout to create amazing and dynamic and also responsive user interfaces. Now let's dive deeper and onto the next, right? That's Autolayout. What are Autolayout? Autolayout is a constraint-based layout system designed for building dynamic and responsive sized user interface. Put it simple, let's put it very simple. It lets you create user interface layouts that dynamically adapts for all screen sizes without manually setting the frame of each view. Another thing about Autolayout that you should know is that Autolayout is a property that lets you create designs that grow to fill or shrink to fit and reflow as their contents change. You can add Autolayout to frames and components. You can add Autolayout using what? Shift A on your keyboard. Now this might sound so overwhelming, right? But it's so simple. Now I'm going to use Autolayout to create one of the awesome components that we always create, right? Which is what? A button. Now I have a text property here. I click on T, or I go to my navigation bar here and I select the text tool and I type in button, right? How do I add Autolayout to this? You can add Autolayout to any object property, right? How do I do that? This is a text property, a text object. I click on Shift A, Autolayout is added. Can you see a frame has been added? Let's name this as what? As our Autolayout frame. Autolayout frame. Can you see that? Or let's name it as our button, right? Our button component. So I'll just leave it at that. Our Autolayout button. Let's use that name in convention. Oh, sorry about that. Yeah. auto layout button. And yeah, so notice what happens, right? When I click here, Shift A, I use it to add auto layout, right? And I have some awesome features here, right, that are relating to the auto layout feature. Now let's have a rectangle so I can demonstrate that also with a rectangle. If I click on Shift A, notice what happened. A frame has been added, and this is the child elements, right? This is the child object, and we have the parents container, which is the auto layout container. Now we can't have a button, right, without either a stroke or a fill. So let's add a fill to it. Let's go with this. Let me use a blue. Yeah, so I'm using my design my styles that I have here, right? So the styles that I've created in one of my design systems, so that's what I'm using. You can look that up on Google and you get a lot there. So yeah, so this is the button, right? Auto layout helps to what? To create user interfaces or designs that grow to fill or shrink to fit. Now this is basically what it means, right? If I duplicate this text object, let me say Ctrl D, I duplicate that. Do you notice what happens to the parent container? The size increases, right? Meaning that what? It grows to fill. And if I delete this, look at what happens. It shrinks to what? To fit, right? Basically, that's what auto layout, easy way, right? Very awesome. Now, if you are working with normal group, let me have a group here using a rectangle. I have a rectangle. Let me take it to the back, and let me change the color of the rectangle to this. Hope this contrast is not too much, so it won't disturb you. Yeah, it's good. Yeah, so we have this, right? I'm going to group them together by pressing highlights on both of them and Ctrl G. I have this as a group. Can you see group 1? Notice if I duplicate this, it's seeming like nothing happened, right? But I have another instance of that here. Can you see? And inside that is still on the same group. So groups are not what? They are not dynamic and they are not responsive. But I love auto layout. Auto layout helps with that. Now let's look at some basic features that we have that we can apply to this auto layout container. The first one is what? Is direction. That's what we have here. These two buttons that we have here is direction. But to explain direction well, I'm going to have an icon. Shift I. Let's see if I have an icon here. Okay, I don't have an icon, so let me just bring an icon from Iconify plugin that I have here. It loads up. Let me just search for a plus icon and I add that. Let me import as a component and I have that. Yeah, so let me change the color of this to the white we are using. F, enter. Now look at what happens, right? If I move this object, the icon object, inside this, can you see what happens? It creates a space for it, right? It grows. The auto layout grows towards to fill. So it creates a space. I can duplicate this. It creates another instance of that, and this auto layout keeps on moving. That keeps on increasing. Awesome. Now to explain the direction feature of the auto layout, it can be directed towards the horizontal or the vertical axis. Now this is on the vertical axis. That's why we have it this way. If I duplicate this, it keeps on going down because it's directed vertically. Now if it's for the horizontal, just easy way I want to change this. Let's say I want to, on my mobile device, I want it to be aligned vertically, but on my desktop it has a bigger screen. I want it to be aligned horizontally. With one click I can do that. Awesome, right? Another property of auto layout is the space between each element, right? A space between items. Now this helps you to dynamically change the space that you have between each element, right? Now look at, there are two ways to change that. The first one is by clicking on this box that we have here, that's the space between, and you can change the size that you want, that is space between each item, right? Let's change it to 24. Okay, that's 26. I like using the 8pt rule. So we have that. Can you see? 24 has been added, and if you want to also change that, you can also click on these bars that we have here, right? Click on them. You have a box there. You can easily type in 6. This is one of the Figma updates, right? Notice that Figma recently updated their user interface. I'm sure everyone got that from the user and Figma config, right? I hope you also attended that. It was an awesome event. Now let's dive back into what we have. We've talked about what the space between. The next one we'll be talking about is what is the alignment property. Now alignment property helps you to want to align the objects, right, that you have inside the auto layout container, and you can align these objects in two different ways. Now I'm going to restrict the auto layout to follow the changes that I want to make, right? I want to dynamically change this. How do I do that? I click on control and I can increase the size of this, and it's not going to affect the auto layout. It means that I'm telling Figma to ignore the auto layout, right? That's why I can do this by holding control, and I can also increase this just for me to explain the alignment property. Now there are 9 types of alignment that you have here. That the first one is what top left, meaning that what is going to be affixed to the top left. The next one, let me increase this well. The next one is what to top center. We also have what top right, and we have what center right. We have center just by clicking on one button, and I can manipulate that. Is this not awesome? Yeah, auto layout is awesome and it's so interesting. The next one we have is what bottom center and also what bottom right. Just by clicking on one button, I can dynamically change that. Let's take back to the center, and we have that. Now the next thing we can do is to dynamically change the padding. Let's have this as a normal button. Also always have one icon, right? Except if you are working with an advanced button that has more than one icon, but most times always have what just one icon. This button is 24 pixels. This let me change this to 18 pixels, or let's have it as 24 also. Normally I want to use 18, so let's use 18 pixels. Now notice that I've told Figma to ignore the auto layout I added, right? Meaning that what the parent container is not going to fill, or it's not going to shrink depending on the changes that I made to the child object, right? If I increase this, if I keep on duplicating, notice that nothing happens again. It's because I've told Figma to ignore that change. And how did I do that? I click on the auto layout container and hold control, and I now can you see I move this, and notice another awesome feature that was added, which brings us down to what resizing in Figma, right? Resizing auto layout. One of the most powerful function of auto layout is its ability to control the dimensions of the object in an auto layout frame. Set resizing behavior for parents auto layout frames to adapt to any changes made to their children objects. This is sounding so complex, right? But it's very easy. Now notice that because I have told Figma to give me the ability to dynamically change the dimensions, so I can set the width and the height by myself from here. Can you see I can set it to any value I want? But I noticed another feature that's been added here, right? Fixed and what vertical resizing and what horizontal resizing. Now this is basically how it works. If you have told Figma to ignore the auto layout property that you added, right, meaning that what the parent container won't react to the changes that you made to the child objects, right? So I've told auto layout that no, I don't want that, right? I want to set the width and height by myself. You can also do that using auto layout property. Now coming back to resizing, right? Resizing helps us to create awesome stuff. Now if I change this, you have 3 types of resizing. You have the fixed, width, hog content, and another one that we have is what is the fill container. But for now we'll explain this too, right? The fixed mean that what you can change the height on the horizontal, the width on the horizontal, and you see here width fixed also. You can also change the height by yourself. So anytime you just change this, Figma automatically notes that what okay you want to set the width and height by yourself. So regardless of the amount of objects you have inside this container, the parent frame or the parent container won't increase or shrink, or it's not going to fill. It's going to ignore all those changes. Now but if you tell it to hog content, right, look at what happens immediately. Ctrl Z, I just click on hug contents here. Look at what happened, right? It's hugging the what? The contents. It's hugging what? It's hugging the objects, right? On the left and right, it's hugging what? The objects. And another thing that it's doing again, if we change it on the vertical axis, notice what is hugging the content. But you might be thinking, oh, why is this space here? I don't know where this spaces is coming from. Where is it coming from? Let me change this back to auto or 0. Let me change the line height back to auto. Yeah, so we have that. It was line height that was adding extra space. But you might be noticing, where is this padding? Where is it coming from? Why is this not hugging this directly? It's because what? Auto layout also allows you to what? To add, to dynamically what? Change the padding, which brings us to the last feature, or by using the auto layout. That's the features that we have here. We also have other features, but the basic features that we can see. So now, horizontal padding, you can easily change that. 8, that's 8 pixels, right? Let's say we want to change it to 20 pixels and see what happens to the button. Can you see? 20 pixels was added on the left and right. 20% was added on the right, 20% was added on what? On the left hand side. Also what? Vertical padding, top and bottom, right? So if I change this to 24, notice what happens, right? So let's bring top and bottom, let's set it to 12, and let's set the left and right to, let's say, 18. Oh yeah, 18 is cool. So we have this, but I want more white space, so I can change this to 16. I don't know. I just love white spaces, so I can have this as my button. Now the space between here, let me change to 8 pixels, so we have a good button. Yeah, so you might be thinking, okay, what if I want to change this? I want the space that I have here to be different from what I have here, right? The padding that I have here should be different from what I have here. How do I do that on this box? Since this is just directly affecting the horizontal padding, which means it's affecting both the left and right, you can do that by just using a comma, typing it inside the box there. Let's say I want the left to be 18 and I want the right to be 24, comma and 24, and I press enter. Notice what happens here. If I highlight on this, I have 24, and I highlight on this, I have what? 18. Now for the horizontal axis, it has been done. For the vertical axis, we can also do the same. Let's say we want the top to be 12 and comma, we want the bottom to be 8 pixels, and I have that. Now with Figma updates, I can dynamically change this using some awesome shortcuts. You can just click on this bar and drag it up. Notice what happens. If you drag up, it reduces the size of the padding, and if you increase it, I can set this to 24. I can also do the same here. I'm not holding anything on my keyboard, and yeah, but if I want to dynamically change, you can also do that on the right and left. The bars are there. If you want dynamically change, let's say you want the top and bottom to be the same thing, what do you hold? You hold alternate on your keyboard, and if I drag it, can you see I drag the top side? What happens? It reacts, it allows me to change both the values of the top and the bottom, and it gives them the same value, right? 17. Let's change it to 16. Holding alternate 16. Can you see 16 here, 16 here? On the left and right, you can also do the same, right? If I click on this, hold alternate, I can just do this, and let's say this to 20. Yeah, here too should be what? 20. Thank you. And this is because what? It is aligned to the left. If I still align this here to the right hand side, to the left hand side, and I increase this, let's say I increase this to 56 pixels, notice what happens, right? It's on the aligned to the left. I can change it center. I want this center, please. Center. Nothing happens, right? It's because here is what? 20, and here is what? 56. So let's change it dynamically. Now let's see, how do we dynamically change all the values, right? With just using these bars. How do you do that? You hold on alternate and shift. Can you see? By holding alternate and shift, if I hover on this, and can you see? Just on one, I can also hover on this. It gives every site, right? It gives them the same padding. Let's set that 20. Come here, we have 20, 20, 20, and that's so awesome. Now I've been boring us with button. Why am I just dealing with button? Is that only what auto layout can do? Now let's create another list. Let's create a list item, right? A list item. Let's say we have this. Let me use my Eclipse tool. O, that's the shortcut key, and I also have a list item, right? Let's change it to list item. I can add auto layout to these two by highlighting them. Shift A is aligned to the center, and to the left I want this aligned to the left. Yeah, so now I want to explain nested what auto layout, which means that what you have an auto layout feature inside another auto layout feature. How does that work? We have a list item, so I'll name this as what? Anyone that is good with HTML, right, you would have this as li, right? That's the li tag, so let's have it as li, and I will duplicate the li. I'm holding alternate and shift, that's why I can duplicate it that way. So I'll add auto layout to this. Shift A, auto layout feature has been added. As you can see, we have this here. Now our name is as what do you guys think? UL, right, for the developers in the house, or you have your list container, right? So this is the list item, and that's the list container. So I have it as UL, but let me use design 10. So list container, and you have this as the list item. Now this is an auto layout, this is an auto layout, right? I want to make this to be so dynamic, right? As you know, we have some awesome feature here, right? We can manipulate the space between, but first let's give it the space between should be what, 16 pixels, and let's say the space between here, that's on the left and right padding, let's say we want to have a card kind of, let's say we give it on the left and right, I give it 24 pixels, and on the top and bottom I give it like 24 pixels also, just to demonstrate that. And we have this, right? I can still dynamically change this, right? I can change, I've highlighted all of this, I can change their property with just one click. Let's say the space between the list item I have here and the eclipse, I want it to be 16 pixels. I can do that. I can change it to 54, 56, I can change it to 32, and it works, right? And yeah, another thing I want to show you guys, right, is the last resizing property, which is the fit container. Notice that this appears here, right? If I highlight on the child object here, this is an auto layout feature, and this is an auto layout feature. So the fill container means that what you want the child object to fill the parent container, right? So regardless of the changes I made to this, I want this to respond to such changes. Now let me use my lorem ipsum. Let me use lorem ipsum plugin. Where are you, lorem ipsum? Let me just add a sentence. It's loading. I just want one sentence, or let me say yeah, one sentence, and I generate one sentence. So I have this sentence, right? But notice what happened, because auto layout has been added. This is what it is, increasing the parent container, right? Which is how we want it to behave. But let's say we want it to be dynamic, right? That when I increase this, I want the child element to also what react to all those changes, right? Now let's see if we can achieve that using the resizing property. I'll change the resizing property now to fill container, and I'll change the text also what, not all content, to fill container, and let's see what happens. Whoa, wow, this is not amazing. Just using auto layout and what, we have started going into some little advanced stuff, right? Auto layout and what, and resizing, and look at how it works, right? So I can change this, I can just change this to, let's say Femuski Dev is a product designer. Can you see? And it dynamically changed that way. Now let's create a normal card. Let's create a card. This is for the list. Let's create a card before we round up. So card, what do you think a card will have? It will have this. I click on F. No, not a rectangle. So let's import some little image, right? Which plugin will I use? Let's use the Unsplash plugin. Let it load there. Give Unsplash a minute. Yeah, so I'll just import any. I'll import the first image I have here. Let's say animals. Do I love animals? Okay, I love this fox. So I'm adding this fox here, and let me reduce the size of this fox so that we can use it to create a button, a card, sorry. So this, I'm going to wrap it inside an auto layout. How do I do that? Or inside a frame or auto layout, depending on what I want. Shift A, and I remove the space padding between everywhere. I don't want any padding. Yes, I just want it to hug this. Can you see this? That's the fox. Now what else would I want? Let me duplicate this. I want to have the heading, right? Let's say I am a fox, or animals that, how am I using capital letter? Okay, let's use that I love. I don't like a fox, by the way. I think it's a wild animal, but let's use that. Now after the heading, we also have what? The text property. I'm just duplicating this. How do I do that? Hold alternate, click on it and hold alternate. Can easily duplicate this. If you want to duplicate the child property, you can do that. Now I'll change everything here. I want it to be fit. Yeah, so what do I do here? I'll use Lorem Ipsum plugin also and bring in something amazing. That's a sentence, right? I have this, so I want just one sentence. Let's make it 2. Generates. Yeah, so I want to shrink this, right? Because this is a button. Let me change it to 12 pixels. I want it at 12 pixels. I'm using Poppins font for those that are interested. I'll change the line height to 160%. That's 1.6 line height, and that should work. Yeah, so just using my color variation, so I can change this. Yeah, I have this here, right? So how else want this to be a card, so I can add this button. Let's say learn more, or buy me, or something. Okay, let's say learn more, because that will be the good call to action. I don't think you want to buy a fox. Learn more. What else do you want to add? What else do you want to add? The card. Yeah, let's say you want to have the price of the fox here, right? I'm just doing this at random. Let's see. Let's say you have dollars, and let's say it's $50 or $50,000. I don't think you want to buy a fox for $50. It's quite expensive. Okay, we have this, right? So we're going to create a good button from this. The first thing you do, well, while you are design in layers, right? Everything starts from foundation. So this is where I'll be starting from. I've added a frame to this guy. The next thing is here, right? These are together. That's the header and the description text are together. Shift A, I've added auto layout to that. Let's say I want the space between each of them should be 16 pixels, and yeah, I would want to increase this, so I can still right click, go to my Lorem Ipsum, easily change this. Let's say we have we want 6 sentences, or 4 or 5. Let's say 5. Generate. So we have that, and that thing we can do. Let me click on K. That's the scale tool, so I can reduce this. I want the width and height to be set at fixed values. Let's say 2 on the width, we want 300 or 320 pixels, and the height I want to set it to 200 pixels. Yeah, notice that nothing happens to this image, right? I want to explain some little things to you, but we have, this is the container, so this is the image container. Yeah, so what else can I do here? I want to have this here, and this together is together with this, right? And these are a frame. I want to use the 12 pixels. Let's say 16. Okay, 16, right? And I want 120. I want 12 on the top and bottom. On the left and right, I might want, let's say 18. I don't know. You can set your button the way you want. We are want to create a responsive card now. So this has been added together. This, I'm going to also add this to the same frame. Shift A, and now this tree, you should know that this and this are together, right? So Shift A, and we are going to add it to this. So this is supposed to be our card, right? You can name this as our card. We have this as the card contents. And you have that as the price and what, and the button, right? So this is our button. Just some little naming conventions. Now we want to have this to be a dynamic card. So the first thing we'll do let's add some padding to our card since I used auto layout there. So I want the left and right to be what? 20 pixels on the left and right, and on the top and bottom I want it also to be 20 pixels. And yeah, right, so let me add some background to it. I want the background, the fill to be this color, yes. And now I want to create a dynamic button, right? A dynamic card, sorry. So I want, when I change this, I increase this, I'm using scale now, right? The scale tool. Let me change it back to the pick tool. If I increase this, notice that nothing happens. Yeah, we're back. So I have this as V, and nothing happens. But I want, when I increase this, I want this to be dynamic. I want it to shrink, and I want the contents to react to the changes I make to this. Now, how do I do that? We are combining both resizing, constraint, and auto layout together. Now, the first thing I want to do, I'll click on this, right? That's the first layer, the first object we have inside the card container. Now I'm going to change the horizontal resizing to fill container. Notice what happens, right? The frame has filled that container. And also what the image, I want to set it to what? Fill container. Can you see what happens? That's on the horizontal, and I want also from the vertical to be what? Fill container. Awesome. Can you see how I'm feeling? I don't need to drag it. Just with one button, I'm dynamically changing that. Now also for the image frame, the image container, right? I want that to also what? Be fill container. That's on the vertical axis, right? Now I'm done with that. Let me add some little corner radius, let's say 8 pixels. Yeah, and also clip contents so that you can see that. And another thing that we want to change now is the space between each of these contents, right? This and this is too much. I will do that. Click on this. I can just use these bars. Let's say I want it to be around 16 pixels. Yeah, 16. Did I get it? I wrote 15. I'll just change it here, 16 pixels, right? And another thing we want to do, right, is, yeah, inside here, I want, when I increase this, look at what happens now. If I increase this, can you see what happens, right? Just by changing one like this. But I want everything to be dynamically increasing and reacting that way. So I'm going to do that to here also. The main content, the main container, that's the card content. I'm going to change the resizing also to fit container, and yeah, that's on the horizontal axis. And also inside here, that's for this, I'll change it to fit container also. And I want this to be bolded so that, yeah, it's the header. And I want the space between each of these should be around 12 pixels. That's how I can just create a button. So easy, right? I can give it any value I want, or 12 pixels. Then I have this. I'll change. Can you see it's outside, right? There's some part of it are outside the main frame that we have here. That's the main container. Just by clicking on this, change it to fill container. I have that here also. I change the fill container. Now let's check what happens, right? If I increase this, wow, is this not amazing? This is so awesome. Another thing we can do is to have this at that. This is the last one. That's want to make this also dynamic, right? What will we do? This brings us to another feature of auto layout, which is the spacing mode. I want this to increase, the space alone to increase, right? I want this to be fixed to the left. I want this to be fixed to the right hand side. So I'll change the spacing mode of this here by clicking on this menu bar, and I have this. Can you see spacing mode is packed now, meaning that what is going to follow the space that I can. That it means that I can manually input any space here. That's from the space between, right? But let's say I don't want to be the one. I want it to respond to the changes I made to its parent container, right? So I'll change this back to what? Space between. So let's check that. What happened? Nothing happens, right? Why is that not working? We have not added fill container to the parent container, right? That's to this. That's why it's not working. So if I add this, change this to what? To fill contents. That's fill container, and I have this. Voila! Is this not amazing? Is this not amazing? Yeah. So do we want to stop here? Yes. Let's stop here. But let me just show you something that you can do. On your design panel, you have where you can change different sizes of the frame, right? Which I showed you guys before. So I can change this to an iPhone 11. why doesn't it shrinks, right? It doesn't work. Why is that not happening? That means we have a problem here if that doesn't work, right? Why is it not reacting to that changes? Because we did not add what? We did not add the constraints, right? We did not add the constraints to it. So let's press Ctrl Z and add constraints to all this. Left and right, meaning that what I want this to scale, but I want it to keep the padding that I have here. And change this also to what? Left and right. So let's change that again to another frame size. Wow, can you see? Is that not amazing? Awesome. Like, I still have the spacing, I still have this, and this is an iPhone 11. I can change it also to what? To anyone. iPhone SE. Can you see? Just with this button, I can do that. I can also change it, and look at what happens if I increase the size, the content I have here. Let's say I want to increase this. Let me remove some part of it. Look at how it scales, right? But the horizontal axis does not increase. Why is that? Why doesn't it respond to that change that I made? It's because I did not add this. I'm going to change it to, on the top and bottom, I want it to be left and right. So this, and I can't add that, right? Because I have not added auto layout to this auto layout feature to the main container here. So I'll add that to it right now. Click on this. Now if I decrease this, it should work, right? Will this work? Let's see. It should shrink. Wow, this is amazing. And let's increase this also. Let's now change the frame. Let's change the frame to iPhone X back. Awesome. Let's change it to Android small. I still have the space. Let's change it to Android large, and I can resize this any way I want. Now let's say we want to do something that is so awesome, right? That I want everything to be so elastic. Now change this to, let me change this to fill container. That's this I want this to be fill container. Auto layout has been removed. I want this to be fill container. I want this to be fill container also. I'll change this to scale. That's for the constraints. And this also, auto layout feature has been added, right? Awesome. So this is so amazing. We'll be stopping here for today, and if you guys have any other question, then we answer them. I want this to be left and right. I want this also to be left and right, and I want this to be top and bottom. Why can't I change that? Okay, this is supposed to be fill, so you have to check it. Every element has to be fill container aside the button. So there's easy way to do it. Click on this, just press enter, check it. Is it fill container? It's all content. Press enter again. What's happening? I change it to fill container. This is fill container, fill container. This also what? Fill container. I want this to be fill container, fill container. This also should be aligned to the center, and I want it to be all content. I'll change the resizing. Let's revert to what we have initially. All content. Okay, auto layout is not added here. That's why I can't have that fill container. Yeah, so I have it now because auto layout has been added to the main components. Let me check that out if everything is well fixed, so that we'll have something that is dynamic. I want it to be fill container. I want this also to be fill container, so that regardless of how I increase this, let's check that out. Can you see? Amazing. Let's increase the text size. So I can play with this all throughout today's session, but we want to do that, right? So let's generate more. So we'll be stopping here because of time. If you have any other question, we'll be going into advanced auto layout, right? This session was just to take newbies on some awesome features. There are some features we still have on Figma on auto layout, like we have some little features here, the stroke excluded, canvas staking, and also the text baseline alignment. So maybe we'll be going over that in another session. Thanks for having me, Design Corners, and you guys can drop your question in the comment section. Peace. And I remain what? Pemuski Dev. Thanks for having me, and thanks for watching this tutorial also. Bye.